Well, good morning and welcome again to Elevenses. It's show number 185. It's Wednesday, the 3rd of November, which means we're into the final month of autumn. And it's a beautiful, if rather crisp morning here in London at the moment. Beautiful blue sky. I think we might have had a touch of frost last night, actually, which will be the first of the year. Right, so we've got a reasonably busy show for you this morning. We have a story about how a newspaper can actually make a biking fatality seem worse than it really is. The DVLA are commissioning research into family members helping learners. Just 1,000 charging points have gone in at supermarkets over the last 21 months. Husqvarna Norden 901. I'll be asking if it's a KTM in Huski clothing. And the final piece of today's show, talking point, we'll look at the A2 bikes, what I'm calling the charge of the Light Brigade. So settle yourselves down, grab yourself a brew. For the next 30 minutes or so. We've actually got no live viewers today, which is very, very unusual. Normally we've got a few people actually tuned in live and plenty more tune in later. So hopefully we'll see a few as we go through the show today. Right, anyway, don't forget, if you've got comments and questions, I'll try to get back to you, obviously not live if there's nobody here live, but I will try to answer them as they pop up after the show is finished. Right, okay, so today, what can we talk about? Well, first of all, just a quick reminder that the presentation today is Breaking the Circle, and that's going out later today at I haven't got the right thing shared here, hang on, gotta get the picture up. There it is. That's the one I'm looking for. It's called Breaking the Circle. It's all about braking in bends and whether it's a must-do skill or whether it is a avoid at all costs maneuver. So that's going out at 8 p.m. this evening. Tickets are still available. If you want to sign up to it, you need the booking link, which I am also trying to cut and paste into the comment stream so you'll know where it is. Here it goes. It should be up any second now. So yeah, if you want to spot that tonight, come along, join me. Breaking the Circle, all about braking in bends, and I'll explain my approach to whether or not it's a good idea. Right, okay, so back to the news. Well, as I've mentioned before, I get a news feed which tells me what's going on in the world of biking, and one of the sad things about it is that it often reports fatal crashes, and yet another one sadly appeared in my feed over the weekend, Sunday I think it was, and this one appeared in the Blackpool Gazette. Now, according to their headline read, Blackpool biker Sam Cardwell, who died after hitting a road sign and parked car at 51 miles per hour in a 30-mile-per-hour zone, had drugs and booze in his system, inquest is told. So that's a very damning headline, isn't it? And the story went on to say that the motorcyclist who died in the collision in Blackpool was found to have drugs and alcohol in his system over the legal limit, a coroner said. And it continued that the toxicology report found that the 27-year-old rider had alcohol, cocaine and cannabis in his system at levels higher than the legal limit. The investigating officer was also quoted as saying it was estimated he was travelling at 51 miles per hour. He collided with a road sign, then hit the rear of a parked car. Now, they also said that investigations at the crash site revealed a road defect, but concluded that had no effect on the crash. So it all sounds pretty familiar, really, isn't it, for bad accidents of this sort? A rider speeding and clearly off his head on drugs and alcohol. And then you go on to read the body of the story. And here we find a rather different story, because Assistant Coroner Victoria Davis said the results of the blood tests should be interpreted with caution. And she explained that that's because the blood sample for the toxicology report was only taken during a post-mortem examination. And it turns out he'd been given a blood transfusion. So Ms. Davies said the results should be taken with a pinch of salt. Now, I'm not a medical expert. I have no idea how likely it is that alcohol, cannabis, and cocaine would be in a blood transfusion. But clearly, the coroner was concerned enough here that might have been the case, enough to have a picture of doubt in her own mind and to attempt to paint that picture of doubt into the inquest. So basically, why does the headline then make a point on focusing on the drugs and booze in Mr. Cardwell's system? Well, probably, unfortunately, because it's the headline that appears on other pages on the newspaper website, but also the headline that appears on syndicated web feeds like mine, the news feed like mine. Yeah. And of course, the more shocking the headline, the more likely people are to click on it. I certainly did. And then read the story. And of course, every advert displayed on the page means advertising revenue for the newspaper. So I think that's actually a pretty despicable approach to the story there. It's basically painting a false picture in the headline. It's like putting a summary for a TV show or a book, which actually has no relevance, or at least paints a misleading picture of what you're going to find when you actually watch the show or read the book. So I honestly think that Blackpool Gazette should be slapped quite hard for that particular story. Right, okay. Don't forget, if you have anything that you want to say about these stories, do drop me a line. I will try to get back to you while I'm on the air. If I can't do that, I will talk to you after the event. Okay. The DVLA have announced that they're going to look into how they can provide more help and support for learner drivers and their friends and family as they take them through and beyond the initial driving process. Now, years ago, many learner drivers, of course, got significant help from their parents. And yes, although I had driving lessons with an actually ex-police instructor, actually, my mum did spend quite a long time sitting in the passenger seat with me whilst I just got some practice in. But it's actually quite rare to see a private car with an L plate stuck on it now. Part of the problem is obviously insurance costs are swinging. I mean, they really, really are. A friend of mine looked into putting his kid on the family car insurance and found that the insurance bump with him on it would actually be more than the cost of the car. So the DVSA say what the thing they want to do is try to give learners and family members a better understanding of how long it takes to learn to drive, because one common complaint is that courses are too long and cost too much. So the DVSA really want to encourage learners to book and take a driving test only when they're ready and not try to short circuit the learning process, particularly by booking a private test. Now, rather scarily, the article states that less than 50% of those who take their test pass first time, and of those who fail at the moment, around 85% are having their test terminated by the examiner. So basically it's finished early and the candidate is simply brought back to the test centre because the examiner determines that whilst the candidate is not about to be abandoned in the middle of the road because they're too dangerous to drive, they certainly don't want them driving any longer than possible. Now, one of the problems, of course, is that the waiting list has gone through the roof. It's gone from 6 to 14 weeks due to almost 2/3 or 3/4 almost of tests being cancelled last year. So the research has already shown that family and friends can be actually quite influential on when a learner decides they are ready to take the test. So it's not just the driving instructor's information. So they're going to carry out an online survey and try and follow that up with interviews with family and friends. Right, so don't forget, if you want to catch this show live, it goes out at 11 on Wednesdays and Sundays. Very, very occasionally I have to do a recorded show, but nearly always it's a live show like today. Right, okay, so next story. How many electric charging points have gone in supermarkets recently? Well, if you've pulled up to do your family shopping, you may have noticed every now and again that you'll spot a electric charging point. Now, here's the bad news. According to data analysed by ZapMap and the RAC, fewer than 1,000 new electric vehicle charging points have actually been installed in supermarkets in the last 21 months. Now, obviously, things have been slowed down by COVID, but there were 1,112 in place before January the 2020, and so that makes a total of just over 2,000 on sites that now the RFC tried to paint that as a positive result by saying the numbers up 85%, but it's a pretty poor show because the big seven that operate supermarkets actually have around 7,000 stores. The total of the publicly accessible charge points is around 26,000 at the moment, is just about 8% of that total, so it's up slightly, up 6.5% in 2020. The article puts a spin on Tesco's contribution, saying the brand has installed, has more EV chargers than any other supermarket. They put 641 in this period, and that gives it the total of 922. But it's across 4,000 stores, so only 1 in 9 actually has a charging point. Morrison's is your best shot for finding an EV charger. They have them at 40% of their stores, and your next best is Lidl, actually, with 24% of its 141 stores covered. The bad news, though, is that as of the end of August 2021, there were more than 650,000 plug-in vehicles on the road, split roughly 50-50 between pure electric and plug-in hybrids. Now, if you want to see where the charging points are, there is this facility here, which I'm just about to pop into the comment stream. There we go. It's called ZapMap, and if you follow the link, it'll take you to the live map, which shows you where charging points are, and it'll also show you which ones are actually available or being used for charging at that moment. Right. Okay. So the latest adventure touring bike has hit the streets. It's the Husqvarna Norden 610. So let's have a quick look at that. There it is. The Huski website calls it exceptional, powered by a smooth and torquey 899cc parallel twin with an output of 105 horsepower, housed in a light steel trellis frame. The Norden 901 is the complete long-distance travel package. Off-road ready suspension with long travel will take you across terrain you wish to traverse, while comfortable ergonomics make every journey an adventure, not a trial. So basically, it's an adventure riding machine with some off-road riding capability. Now, the concept machine actually appeared in bike shows at the end of 2019, but the bike should appear in dealers within the month. Now, as you probably figured out already, the Huski is yet another platform motorcycle. It takes the engine and the frame from a different bike and then modifies the bolt-on parts. In this case, the platform comes from the KTM 890, not surprising really, because KTM actually own the Swedish brand. So you basically get the 899 double overhead cam twin, the peak torque of 100 Newton meters at 6,500 and that 105 peak horsepower at 8,000 RPM. The frame itself is also carried over, although they say it has a slightly more aggressive rake and trail, which is probably due to the change in the length of the fork more than anything else. It gets white power, Falcon shocks, which are also lifted basically from the KTM, albeit with a bit more travel at either end. So the differences are you get slightly more ground clearance than the basic Norton, basic KTM 890 Adventure, slightly less than the off-road ready 890 Adventure R. The bike appears to tip the scales at 204 kilos. That's actually 7 kilos more than the KTM, which is slightly odd because it actually carries around 1.5 litres less fuel. So it's put on some weight around the middle somewhere, not entirely sure where. You get the standard electronics package, ride modes, optional explorer mode, slipper clutch, cornering traction control, cruise control, cornering ABS, which is switchable between standard and front wheel only off-road mode. You get the wheelie limiter. The clutch has an assist on it, and you get a quick shifter. There's a non-adjustable steering damper, and the fairing allegedly has spoilers to increase high-speed stability. Rather oddly, given the rest of the components, the rear end is straight push shock. There's no progressive linkage. The preload only gets a rebound damping. Sorry, preload comes with a remote knob, but you only get rebound damping adjustable with it. And you actually need a Torx driver to do that as well. You can't do it on the fly, which is slightly weird. So it's a bit of an odd mix of adjustability and no fiddle parts. You get a range of around about 248 miles, according to Husqvarna. 5 gallons, I think they're US gallons, is quoted. So you do get some attention to the ergonomics. Bars adjustable, 2-position seat. The rear brake has a 2-position tip as well, which is quite nice. You also get an optional heated seat, but sadly, center stand isn't fitted, but is an add-on. LED lights, you do get 2 auxiliary lights. You can just see them tucked in there just under the main headlight on the fairing. The usual TFT Bluetooth dash, which works with an optional Huski connectivity kit. Touratech luggage, acrophobic, heavy-duty wheels, headlight protector, heated grips, taller windscreen, etc., etc. will all empty the wallet. No price yet seen. But in the US, the price announced is actually slightly less than the direct competition. Some reports say that the body is slim, but I have to say it's a bit of an acquired taste, which means basically I don't like it. Okay, so as I said, going to be a fairly quick show today because I've got a presentation to give in just a minute. So on to today's discussion point. Now, I've just talked about a big adventure bike, and it doesn't seem all that long ago that I was writing an article asking where all the decent lightweight motorcycles were. This was actually 1997-98, because the then new direct access test to come in, and if you recall, riders who took their test on a 125 got to ride a 33 horsepower bike. The problem was actually finding one, and for the next few years, whilst that 33 restriction was in place, there were real problems actually finding bikes. There were some hard to find and probably hard to fix imports. Suzuki's 350 Goose single was a nice little bike, or there was the 400 Bros Honda, which both of those were actually quite nice bikes, which were popular. Or you could fit a restrictor kit to emasculate a bigger bike. I remember you could actually get a restrictor kit, believe it or not, for a Fireblade. It made the bike virtually unrideable, but so most people took something like a Suzuki Bandit or a Hornet and restricted those. Well, there were just a few new bikes, and some they were pretty mostly uninspired. If you remember the Suzuki Inazuma, that was a 250 which met the rules. Even the racy looking CBR 250R was actually a bit of a styling exercise because it was built around a worthy but uninspiring 250cc single, and it pumped out 26 horsepower, which was exactly the same as my 1980 CB250 RSA had put out, which was built over 30 years earlier. So Motorcycle News assessed the bike as a cheap, honest and stylish workhorse, which was pretty much spot on, but that was exactly the reason I ran, I don't know, I had 4 or 5 of them, CB250 RSs. When I was a courier, I must have notched up around 250,000 miles on those. So virtually the only half-modern bike for that category was actually the 250 Ninja. On top of that, manufacturers virtually ignored the younger riders. Now, then you'll recall that 2011, the middleweight A2 license came in with the new tiered license structure. So I've had 10 years or so of that now. And rather to my surprise, the factories actually reacted almost instantly by designing new models to fit the new license category. Which was 35 kilowatt or 47 horsepower. And they didn't just bring out factory restrictor kits either. Now, one of the first bikes that appeared for the 47 horsepower category was the original NC700 Honda. For some reason, the DCT machine just about sneaked in on the limit. The manual didn't, it was just over the limit. I have no idea why. Since then, pretty much everybody's joined in, and now you can find plenty of machines. There's the sort of sports bikes like the RC390 or the YZR3. Kawasaki have updated their Ninja first to a 300, now to a 400. And there's the rather pretty, I think, CBR 500R, which is a much better bike than the old 250 single. You can get naked roadsters. There's a MT-03, of course, and the Duke 390. Or there's the 500 from Honda, the naked one of those, which is another bike built on that 500 platform. If you want to go scooter, there's something like the X-Max 400. The Piaggio MP3 offers you 3 wheels within the A2 license. If you want to go classic, you can get a Moto Guzzi V7, and you can even get a CMX 500, yet another bike built on that 500 Honda platform, which gives you the bobber look. Even BMW have joined in the game. Now, it's a long time since BMW actually had an entry-level bike aimed at new riders. If you have a long memory, you may recall the long and probably best forgotten R45, which was a pretty horrible motorcycle, but at least it was something that aimed at learners, or I should say newly qualified from learners. BMW really didn't go the much interest in new machines, but they have recently brought out the G310R and the G310GS, and they're both entry-level bikes. They're reasonably affordable, and excuse me, they are both based around a brand new single-cylinder engine. Although I should point out they are built by TVS in India. The GS comes with basic adventure bike styling, and it gets 19 and 17-inch wheels. Excuse me. So the GS is a sort of baby adventure bike, and this is really the point I'm coming towards. The adventure bike market, in my opinion, has turned into oversized, overpowered bikes, really sports bikes posing as adventure machines. Right, so I'll try to stop choking to death. MV actually admit that their adventure style Turismo Veloz is a sports bike by all means. And they say it develops uncompromising performance, adrenaline packed riding experience. Now, I kind of always think that adventure bikes have overgrown themselves. They started off really, if you think about it, developed from trail bikes, and trail bikes themselves were stripped down road bikes, usually fitted with high bars, high level mud guards and exhaust and knobblies, and not a lot else. So the aim was actually to minimize what you were riding to make it easier to ride off roads. But adventure bikes have gone the other way. They've added just about every piece of kit under the sun you can imagine. If the first genuine adventure bike was the 50 horsepower BMW R80 GS, which was, I wouldn't say it was light, but it was reasonably manageable, they've just got bigger size, weight and complexity. The Norden I've just mentioned does keep the weight modest for those bikes, but it's a bit of an exception. But why do you need a big machine? The only real reason is to ride at speed, carrying two people with lots of luggage. But there's no reason that for most people to actually own those bikes. Most of us ride solo. Most of us won't be exceeding the speed limit, and most of us won't be riding huge distances either. I did enjoy the Tracer 900, which I rode around New Zealand in 2019, 5,000 kilometers on that. I quite enjoyed the V-Strom 1000 I rode the previous year, although I have to say that bike wasn't particularly light, and it did have a rather high up riding position. It was top heavy, so it was a bit of a handful at times, and I nearly dropped it when my boots slid on wet paint. So I would have actually been happier with a lower powered, lighter and more manageable machine. I might have had to work the engine a little bit harder, but New Zealand's not exactly the kind of country where you can rip off at high speed on these bikes. So I know I find myself in the minority when I say this, but I really do think that we have lost sight of the go anywhere, do anything machine. um, the Having said that, there is a rebirth of a mid-sized adventure bike, an A2 friendly 47 horsepower bikes, which are less obsessed with speed and the alleged mile crunching ability. Frankly, I could ride 250 miles a day on my 250s when I was a courier. When I upgraded to a GS500, another bike often sneered at, again, just 50 odd horsepower, 500 miles a day was easy on that bike. So let's have a look at some of the mid-range adventure bikes that we can actually find on the market at the moment. I've probably shown you some of these before, but I'll run over them just again. That one there is the CF Moto 650 GT. Now you get a lot of bike for your money. You get some decent get up and go. It is up around the limit for an A2 bike. They're well equipped. They're decently put together. The alternative to that is a a bike that you might not have heard of. This is the Vosges. Now, again, it's another sort of 500 DS. It is called. It comes from a subsidiary to a Chinese company called Lonsin. Vosges was established in 2018, and they say their sole purpose is designing, developing, and building premium motorcycles with high performance. Lonsin, incidentally, been around since 1983. So this bike comes in at a fairly astonishing £5,000. It undercuts just about every comparable bike on the market. BMW 610 GS is actually £5,435 at the moment. The CB 500X Honda is over six. Benelli, they have a TRK 502, which will set you back about another £300 over the top of the Vosges. What do you get? Well, you don't get an old tech engine. A brand spanking new Euro 5 spec twin. It's 471 double overhead cam 8 valve. It's liquid cooled. Lonsin say that the motor is all their own, but there's a bit of a coincidence. It's exactly the same capacity as Honda's CB500. 46 horsepower according to their specs, 44 newton meters of torque. 205 kilos, so it's a little bit porky, but you do get a center stand and crash bars, and it'll push the bike to around about three figures if you want it to. Go down a bit in terms of size and capacity, and you get the oh, that's the wrong one. Where's it gone? I've lost it. I've got a BMW somewhere. No, I seem to have lost the. So that's not the BMW, is it? No, it isn't. Okay, I've lost the BMW. I'm not quite sure what I've done with that. The Zontes 310. Let's go on to that one. This is the Zontes 310. So yes, there we go. We're back to that one. That's again comes with luggage rack. It comes with crash bars. It's £4,299.99p. Okay, not quite as much power as the bigger bikes, but one thing it does have, apart from keyless ignition, is an electronic steering lock. If you walk away from the bike with your key in your pocket and you turn the bars to full lock, the bike will actually detect you've moved away from it and automatically engage the lock. I do like that as an idea. The next one is the Sinis Terrain. That is a 380. It's a single. It's 4,500. You get chassis guards. £300 buys you the complete aluminium luggage kit on the back. So you've got a mini tourer there for under £5,000. If you want to go Japanese, there are options for you here as well. That is the 300 Versys. When Kawasaki stretched the Ninja to the 400, they reused the 300 Ninja engine in this Versys X300. The X represents the fact the smallest Versys actually has a 19-inch front wheel rather than 17-inch, and they're also wired as well. So you can get some moderately serious off-road tyres for it. 39 horsepower, 175 kilos, which means it's very light. So a little bit revvy to all accounts. 5,200 gets you the base model. If there's one bike that I was slightly surprised it took so long to appear, and it's this one. It's the KTM 390 Adventure. It's lighter than the Kawasaki, more powerful than the Honda. You get a nice single cylinder engine there. Should make a fairly terrific adventure bike. £5,500, lacking in bodywork, so it's probably a short distance play tool rather than a tourer. But there we go. That's a look at some of the alternatives to the big adventure bikes, and that's why I called that feature the return of the Light Brigade, or the charge of the Light Brigade. One extra stop press item, which you may remember I mentioned that Zero had loaned a bike to the Scottish Police for use during the COP26 climate change conference. Well, it turns out that they're not the only ones to have got in on the act. If you look closely at the motorcycles here, you'll see what the police there are riding are actually Harley Davidson live wires. So Harley Davidson have logoed up some bikes for the police and loaned them for the climate change conference up in Glasgow. Right, that's pretty much it for today. Don't forget the presentation tonight. Do join me if you possibly can. And then after that, Wednesday, 1st of December, it'll be back to Science of Being Seen. If you haven't seen that, do drop along and join me. If you have seen it, pass on the information to somebody else, because it is genuinely life-saving information. So that's it for another show. Thank you very much indeed for looking in. Ride safe out there, and hopefully see you again in just a few days. So from Kevin Williams here and Elevenses, bye for now.